Wall-E.
Fly! Higher!
Okay, I am getting really good at this.
Hailed in the Purple Crayon.
Frank Lucas is the most dangerous man walking the streets of our city.
This is my home, my country. Frank Lucas don't run from nobody.
American Gangster.
How many were there before me?
She was supposed to have a clean brain. I order you to terminate.
Ghost in the Shell. What do all four of these films have in common?
Those are movies of noteworthiness from the specific years in movies that we're going to talk about today as we continue the 20th anniversary of me covering the biggest new releases of the weekend. This weekend we don't have any big new releases here on Talking About the Movies, so it's another one of our 20th anniversary specials where today we're taking a look at the best and worst movie years of the last 20 years. Now, some of you out there might be wondering, how did I put this list together? Well, I went through all the years that I've covered on the internet, basically, for the past 20 years, and just basically did a list of the movies that I thought were good films, and the bad films as well. And it was kind of a tough list to put together, but I did this a couple months ago, and as you can see here, the list here, it was pretty long to do, but I have the list ready to go here, and the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to split it up into 5 of each. 5 best movie years, 5 worst movie years. We'll get to the best movie years first, and then we'll take care of the 5 worst movie years in the second half of this episode. Basically, we're going to take a look at the years and movies that I thought were the best overall from the past 20 years, and just briefly talk about them in general. So, let's go ahead and start off with the best then. Let's start off with the best movie years of the last 20 years. And we start off with number 5, which is 2009, which, without a doubt, was one of the best movie years in general, because you had so many memorable movies. I think the first time I ever did a top 10 list for this particular year, it was like 15 movies. I really couldn't decide on, a specific 10 movies at that time, but in the time since then, I mean, I've been able to cut it down a little bit, but I mean, but then again, some of those movies have stood out more than my original top 15 list in general. This was the year that gave us some great indie films, like 500 Days of Summer, Sunshine Cleaning. There was a lot of great stuff that a lot of people didn't really give the proper respect to, like Rob Marshall's 9. I still think that is definitely one of the more underrated movies he's ever directed. You got great stuff like Jason Reitman's Up in the Air, his follow-up to Juno, some really good animation in The Princess and the Frog from Disney, and Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs from Sony, which kind of pushed them to the next level. And, some of the more memorable movies for most people, The Princess and the Frog, The Hangover. I just mentioned Princess and the Frog, but The Hangover was one of the big hits of the year. So was Star Trek, so was Up. District 9, I thought, was the best overall movie of that year, largely because of what it was able to do with a small budget and a relatively unknown talent all across the board, creating this really cool sci-fi film that just really stands out even after all these years later. And there were a lot of good movies in 2009, and there were very few real misfires in general. Most of the misfires you can kind of see coming a mile away. Stuff like the aforementioned films, some films I've talked about, some of the worst movies I've ever seen, like Old Dogs, Aliens in the Attic, Bride Wars, Year One, The Fourth Kind, Knowing. Like, a lot of these movies I've talked about in great lengths on the show before. So if you want to go check those videos out, the Time About the Movies playlist is there in the corner for you. But 2009 overall was a terrific year for films, and number 5 on the list for sure. The 5th best year for movies of the last 20 years, 2009. Coming in at number 4, we have 2014. 2014 was a very strong year for movies in general. I mean, there was a lot of really good stuff overall, and a lot of Oscar contenders that came out that year turned out to be really good movies. Stuff like Boyhood, American Sniper, Into the Woods, Unbroken, Birdman, The Imitation Game, Inherent Vice, Selma. But, among the year's highlights that year, some of my favorites include the Liam Neeson movie, A Walk Among the Tombstones, terrific underrated movie, which came out kind of right after, it was right after Nonstop, which was a pretty fun movie overall, but this was definitely the highlight of Liam Neeson's 2014 in terms of his movies. It gave us another really good DreamWorks sequel in How to Train Your Dragon 2, Jon Favreau with a nice return to form for him after a couple years in the blockbuster game with Chef. Terrific film. Very underrated Bill Murray film, St. Vincent, came out that year. Chris Rock made a great movie in Top 5, which was a really good film that sadly has not had the same... It's been kind of pushed off to the side in the years since then, but it's a really good movie, a very underrated film. And of course, you got your classic movies like Guardians of the Galaxy from James Gunn, Captain America: The Winter Soldier, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which was a movie that really kind of elevated the Planet of the Apes series to a whole nother level. Edge of Tomorrow, which was a great movie that nobody went to go see at first, and went on to have this big following. And it's probably one of Tom Cruise's best overall movies in general. And of course, the crowning achievement of 2014 was obviously the Lego Movie, which is still one of my favorite movies of all time, and the welcoming pretty much of Phil Lord and Chris Miller to the stratosphere of whatever these guys are going to do, I'm going to be there first time there to see the film. Yeah, a lot of great movies coming out in 2014, a lot that I haven't mentioned. Some movies that I wasn't expecting to be as great as they would have, as they ended up being, but they ended up being pretty good. Like, 300 Rise of an Empire. It's been 7 years since the last 300 film. You don't expect a prequel to that to be as good as it is, but it turned out to be actually one of the better prequels out there. You got fun stuff like Darren Aronofsky's Noah, the aforementioned Nonstop, Sin City, A Dame to Kill For, another great underrated sequel that nobody really ever talks about, Mr. Peabody and Sherman, Wes Anderson's The Grand Budapest Hotel, Jason Bateman's Bad Words, Muppets Most Wanted, just a lot of really good stuff. Too many to mention on this list, but yeah, a couple stinkers, and two movies in particular that are very high up on my worst of the year list. In fact, my number 1 and number 2 worst movies of all time, Lucy and Transcendence, were released in 2014. So, yeah, that sounds like it would be a bad sign for the year in general, but no, the year in general overall was pretty fantastic. Definitely one of the stronger years in general. Number 4, 2014, terrific year in film at 4 on my list. Number 3 on the list, 2005, when this all began. 2005 was a very big, of course, obviously signature year for me because that was when I started this show at my high school. And while it was going on, I saw a lot of really damn good movies, a lot of game-changing films, a lot of movies that I consider to be some of the best movies of all time. Films like Steve Carell's big leading feature film debut in The 40-Year-Old Virgin, George Clooney directing Good Night and Good Luck, Steven Spielberg's Munich, The Farrelly Brothers' Fever Pitch featuring Jimmy Fallon's probably only good leading film performance in a movie, The Firefly Crew coming to the big screen with Serenity, Wallace and Gromit making their feature film debut with The Curse of the Rare Rabbit, the original Sin City, two of my favorite underrated gems of all time, Nicolas Cage and The Weatherman, and John Cusack and Billy Bob Thornton in The Ice Harvest. We saw the return of Batman, thanks to Christopher Nolan and Christian Bale, and easily one of my favorite movies of all time, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, featuring Robert Downey Jr. and the late great Val Kilmer, directed by Shane Black. Just a terrific year in general for movies. A lot of bad stuff too. Again, some movies that have been on my worst movies of all time, Son of the Mask and Elektra. But you also had some bad stuff like Deuce Bigalow, European Gigolo, Doom, Stealth, Shark Boy and Lava Girl, House of Wax, The Ring 2, Yours, Mine, and Ours, Dirty Love. There's so many movies I can name, but 2005 overall was a really strong year for fun movies in general, really good movies in general, and like I said, it was when this whole thing got started, and 20 years later, here I am talking about this year being one of the best movie years I remember. So yeah, it's kind of hard not to put this in the list when you really think about it. So number 3 on my list of the best movie years of the last 20 years, 2005. Coming in at number 2, we have 2007, which I'm starting to look at my list here, and yeah, between 2005 and 2009 in particular were some pretty good years for movies in general. I think 2006, was kind of the weak link of that whole group there. But 2007 was a really damn good year. And it's an interesting year because most of that year was mostly focusing on these highly anticipated blockbusters that many people were going to assume were just going to dominate the box office. People were just going to love the hell out of them, like, Spider-Man 3, Shrek the Third, Rush Hour 3, Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, Live Free or Die Hard. A lot of these movies, some of them were fun, others not so much, but there were a lot of good highlights in the year in general. Michael Bay's Transformers, the first one was a ton of fun overall. We got to see The Simpsons on the big screen for the first time. There was a lot of really fun movies, Enchanted, Beowulf. The highlights of the year when I think of this year, Surf's Up, very underrated Sony Pictures animated movie, and kind of the first one that really showed that they were on their way to something great in the future. Another great underrated little gem, Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. Michael Cera and Jonah Hill in Superbad, a pretty good year for Judd Apatow because he produced that movie, and he also directed Knocked Up. George Clooney is back in another great movie with Michael Clayton. Jason Reitman branches out with breakout star Ellen Page and Sarah again with Juno. The Bourne Ultimatum, probably the best sequel that came out in 2007. Ratatouille was one that I didn't really love at first, but as time went on, I slowly but surely began to love it more, and it's a film that kind of grew on me over time. That film was great. Charlie Wilson's War, terrific film with Tom Hanks, Julia Roberts, and Philip Seymour Hoffman. Edgar Wright's Hot Fuzz came out that year. American Gangster, I think, is the highlight of the year, no question about it, with Denzel Washington and Russell Crowe, and one of Ridley Scott's best movies he's ever made. There were some bad movies, a lot of bad films. Lindsay Lohan had the film that kind of killed her career at first with I Know Who Killed Me. We had a knockoff of the Lord of the Rings with the Golden Compass that didn't work out. Bratz was pretty bad. Daddy Day Camp, Ghost Rider, Are We Done Yet? Underdog, Awake, Good Luck Chuck, Epic Movie. A lot of bad movies overall, but there were a lot of good stuff overall to combat the bad stuff. And yeah, when I looked at my list, 77 good films over 123 bad movies, I think that's more than enough to say that 2007 overall was a pretty solid year. Second best year overall, but of course, what makes the list for my number one best movie year of the last 20 years? Number one, I really don't think it's much of a surprise when you really think about it in the long term, but 2008, though, was definitely the best year of movies in the last 20 years. I mean, there's so many great movies that came out in that year. Not just the Oscar contenders, not just the big blockbusters, but just really entertaining films all across the board in general. I mean, it was a really impressive year for movies. I mean, this is the year where, we had so many great films from, Disney was finally making its comeback in its animation department with the success of Bolt. The Marvel Cinematic Universe got started with two really good movies right out of the park with the Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk. DreamWorks came back with a vengeance with Kung Fu Panda, the first film in that great series. Ben Stiller gave us the very funny Tropic Thunder, and in a big breakout year for one of its stars, Robert Downey Jr., as he was also in Iron Man, as well as in the criminally underrated Charlie Bartlett. Danny Boyle gave us one of the best Picture winners of all time with Slumdog Millionaire. David Fincher gave us a masterpiece of a movie that probably should have won Best Picture, in my opinion, but hey, Slumdog Millionaire won. It was a better movie, but The Curious Case of Benjamin Button I thought was a very solid film overall. One of my favorite Judd Apatow produced films, Forgetting Sarah Marshall, one of my favorite romantic comedies of all time. Two of my favorite films of all time came out this year, WALL-E and The Dark Knight. These were two Pixar's best film in general, and also the best film from Christopher Nolan. There were some bad movies, as always. Of course, you got a double whammy from Freeberg and Seltzer with Meet the Spartans, and Disaster Movie. Paris Hilton's film career came to a crashing burn with The Hottie and the Naughty. Kevin Costner starred in Swing Vote. Roland Emmerich was back on the list of worst films again with 10,000 BC. The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor was pretty bad. But again, kind of like with the other years, some of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life came out in this year. The big three in particular, Mike Myers and The Love Guru, that was pretty bad. But then the two films that made it into my top 30 worst movies of all time, Mamma Mia and The Spirit. Both pretty bad movies. And yeah, The Spirit was the first movie I ever walked out of because of that damn cat getting killed, man. That's the thing that did it with me with that movie. Like, I hate that movie so much, and it's just like, it's the first movie I ever walked out of, and I've been going to movies at that point for 13 years, and that was the first film that did it to me, was that piece of garbage. But yeah, 2008 overall was a really great year, not just for the films I mentioned, but some great underrated movies. Speed Racer, I think, got a bad rap when it came out, but that movie has held up so much better in the years since it's come out, and I think it's a very underrated cult classic. I don't care what anybody says. I love Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I still enjoy the hell out of that movie. I still enjoy stuff like Wanted and Hellboy 2. I still enjoy stuff like, what was another great one that came out this year? Bedtime Stories. Bedtime Stories was a silly, fun movie, but a fun film nonetheless. Adam Sandler had a couple of good movies in 2008. You Don't Mess with the Zohan was pretty good. What else? What's another one I really liked? Of course, this was the year that gave us Cloverfield. Cloverfield was a fantastic movie. Came out early in the year, as was Rambo. What else? 14 Years of Who was pretty good. I mean, it's definitely not the best adaptation of a Dr. Seuss story, but it certainly beats the crap out of the Cat in the Hat. That's for damn certain. 2008 overall was just a really damn good year. It was definitely the strongest year for movies that I could think of in the last 20 years that I've been doing this. It was easily one of the best years in general. Easily the best year in general. What am I saying? One of the best. Easily the best year for movies in the last 20 years. I mean, I can't think of a better year than we've had. And like I said, it was that gap between 2005 and 2009. That was really the strongest part of the last 20 years. But we've had some good stuff since then, but I don't think everything really could ever top 2005 to 2009 in terms of that stretch of good films that we had. But 2008 definitely is very much at the top of the list, the best movie year of the last 20 years. So that's the 5 best movie years of the last 20 years. What about the worst movie years of the last 20 years? Well, we'll take a look at those as soon as we go back. As soon as we take this commercial break. So please stick around. We will be right back with the top 5 worst movie years of the last 20 years. Stick around. And welcome back. We just looked at the 5 best movie years of the last 20 years, so now let's take a look at the 5 worst movie years of the last 20 years. And how fitting that we're starting off with number 5 on this list, because it's currently the year I'm on time about the movies, 2011. Yeah, 2011 was much rougher than I remember, because let me tell you something, there was a lot of bad movies, especially in the first half of 2011, and there were movies that you look at them and you think to yourself, they can't be all this bad. There's got to be some surprises in there. And no, stuff like Season of the Witch, The Dilemma, The Green Hornet, The Right, The Roommate, Sanctum, The Eagle, Justin Bieber, Never Say Never, which, I mean, technically not one, that one's not too bad, but for the fan base, but, you know, Big Mamas, Like Father, Like Son. What else was there? Beastly, you know, we had the knockoff Twilight. This was the year of the Twilight knockoffs, because we had that, and we had Red Riding Hood, we had Mars Needs Moms, we had Take Me Home Tonight, we had Sucker Punch, one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life, Battle Los Angeles, Green Lantern, Cars 2. It was a bad year for movies in general, but there were a few bright spots, and it didn't take until we got to very late into March and April, where we finally got to see some of the good stuff of the year. You know, stuff like Rango, stuff like Limitless, Source Code. You know, we got the introduction to Insidious. James Gunn bought us Super. You know, we had stuff like Fast and Furious, you know, the new Fast 5, which kind of turned the Fast and Furious series from a streetcar movie into a series of films. We had a great underrated film in Mel Gibson's The Beaver. Jumping the Broom came out in this year. Bridesmaids was a big hit. Some of my favorite movies of all time. Woody Allen's Midnight in Paris came out this year. You know, Kung Fu Panda 2. The Artist, the Best Picture winner this year, was actually really good. Super 8 was a great movie. Conan O'Brien Can't Stop was a really good movie. Horrible Bosses, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Winnie the Pooh, the last installment of the Harry Potter series, Crazy Stupid Love, Moneyball, 50-50, Drive, The Ides of March, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Just a lot of really good movies came out in 2011, but when the bad movies came out in 2011, they were pretty bad, especially the family films. And the summer of 2011 alone had a lot of really, really terrible family films. Jim Carrey and Mr. Popper's Penguins, Kevin James and Zookeeper, The Smurfs. I mean, later in the year, there'll be some bad movies, too. Movies for kids. Jack and Jill, you know. Adam Sandler had a really terrible year in 2011. He was behind 4 of the year's worst movies. Alvin and the Chipmunks Shipwrecked. Even sequels that should be good. Sherlock Holmes: The Game of Shadows was a major step down compared to the first Sherlock Holmes movie. yeah, there was a lot of bad stuff in 2011. A lot of bad stuff, a lot of disappointments, but a lot of good. But there was some good stuff in the end, and I mentioned some of the good stuff overall. But 2011 definitely had its stretch of really, really bad stuff in general, and that's why it's number 5 on this list. Coming up on number 4 here, 2022. We have a couple of years that were after COVID, and 2020 is probably easily the worst movie year of the last 20 years, but I didn't include it in this list largely because of the fact that, that was the year when the pandemic took place, and movie theaters were not putting out, there were not a lot of movies being put out in theaters, so it made sense that 2020 was not going to be a great year because everything was shut down because of COVID. But yeah, after the COVID pandemic happened, most of the movies most of the years on this list coming up here are some of the worst, are definitely the list of the worst movies of the last movie years of the last 20 years. Because yeah, there was a lot of bad stuff in 2022. A lot of movies that, this is coming around the time when people really didn't have an idea of what should be released in theaters and what should be released on streaming. Because now we have streaming that has to come into play, and because now the COVID pandemic is coming to an end and we're trying to get people back to the theaters, we can't decide what movies should be put out where should we put these out at. And there was a lot of bad stuff in 2022. We got stuff like the Jennifer Lopez movie Marry Me with Owen Wilson, which feels like a movie that could have been made 20 years ago and be much better received than doing it now, which really was a bad film. The 365 Days movies came to an end with 2 terrible sequels. Slumberland, failed attempt to try to bring the Little Nemo story to the big screen in a live-action film with Jason Momoa. Judd Apatow made his first really bad movie as a director with The Bubble, which was a movie about a blockbuster being made while the pandemic was happening, which it features an ensemble cast, which should have been a much better movie, but not in this case. Elvis, which, I'm sorry, I don't get what people saw in that movie. I love Baz Luhrmann. I mean, this is the guy who made Moulin Rouge and The Great Gatsby, but that was a bad movie. That was a bad movie in general for me. Bad acting overall, and just it falls into the same category as most biopics. It's playing it way too safe for a marketable audience. Firestarter, really pointless remake. Disenchanted, a pointless comedy sequel coming way past the point where it was time to make one. I mean, 15 years is way too long for comedy sequels. I'm sorry, it just is. But then you get bad stuff like the Ben Affleck, Ana de Armas erotic thriller, Deep Water from Adrian Lyne, which we're way past that time to do that. The star-studded misfire of David O. Russell's Amsterdam, and I can also throw in Babylon from Damien Chazelle, which is pretty much the same type of film. Both of those movies were pretty bad. Another installment in the most pointless film series we've had is of all time, Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore, which I'm sorry, I get that the Harry Potter name is a thing, but these movies are completely pointless. The Fantastic Beasts movies are completely pointless. It ended with Harry Potter. There's no reason to make these movies, and yet they still kept making them even as they kept losing money. Lightyear was probably Pixar's worst movie they've made, and that's saying a lot, but just the fact that they made this movie, I feel like they made that film only because people wouldn't stop asking Disney Plus to put Buzz Lightyear Star Command, the TV series in the 2000s, on Disney Plus. So they said, here's your Buzz Lightyear prequel, now shut up. And that's what we got. The 355 was pretty bad. Morbius was pretty bad. Home Team. Paws of Fury, The Legend of Hank. One of Disney's worst live-action remakes they've ever done. Robert Zemeckis' Pinocchio. And the Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild. Easily the single worst thing to come out of 2022, because that was billed as a sequel to Ice Age, and that did not look like a sequel to Ice Age at all. The Ice Age TV series that came out that same year on Disney Plus was a much better sequel than whatever the hell Buck Wild was supposed to be. Now, 2022 did have its share of good movies. We got a lot of good stuff with installments of franchises like Sonic the Hedgehog, Jackass. Top Gun gave us a really good movie that year. Doctor Strange, we had a new Beavis and Butthead movie, a new Clerks film that was really good. Some great underrated animated stuff too, like Strange World, Turning Red, The Bad Guys was a big one. Jordan Peele had a great third film with Nope. The Bob's Burgers movie was one of my favorite animated films of the year, one of my favorite movies of the year in general, and one of the best movies of the last 20 years. My favorite movie that year was The Batman, the Matt Reeves film, and just opened the door for DC to kind of get back on track and do something new and different, as later that year they would hire James Gunn to take over the DC Studios brand, and lo and behold, what did we get this past summer? Superman, which was friggin' awesome. But yeah, 2022 definitely had a lot of good stuff overall, but There's also a lot of bad stuff in there too, and it really was a year where it's just like, yeah, we're gonna get through more of these years post-COVID, and we're actually gonna get to it right now with the number three movie year on the list. As with number 3 on the list, we have 2021, and this was the first full year since the pandemic where movie theaters were getting back on track and putting movies back in theaters again, and a lot of the stuff they had that coming out was not stuff they should have been proud of. I mean, everyone was getting it bad, not just with theaters, but also on streaming services. There was a lot of disappointments, a lot of stuff that was really highly anticipated movies, but as they came out, we started to realize that, yeah, there's no reason to do this. Like, America the Motion Picture was one of the big disappointments of the year. The Little Things with Denzel Washington went in, and Denzel Washington hardly ever misses. And that film was a major misfire. Melissa McCarthy and Thunder Force. Spirit Untamed was pretty bad. One of DreamWorks' worst animated movies. The Last Duel, which is a Ridley Scott movie that everyone fell in love with, and yet I was just like, this is fucking garbage. It's just him repeating the same stuff he had done beforehand. I liked House of Gucci better than this film, and that film was the one that got panned more than The Last Duel did. Like, Reminiscence was pretty bad, Infinite, Dear Evan Hansen was a mess, Sia's Music, Camila Cabello's Cinderella was pretty bad, Rumble, The Matrix Resurrections, because clearly people were asking for a fourth Matrix movie after how badly they botched the third film. Coming to America, again, over 30 years after the last movie, and they did absolutely nothing with it. Chaos Walking was pretty bad, The Woman in the Window, The Boss Baby Family Business, Paranormal Activity Next to Kin, Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City. There's a lot of terrible movies that came out around that time, but again, we did get some good stuff. There was some good stuff in general. We got a really good return to form with the Ghostbusters Afterlife. Edgar Wright gave us Last Night in Soho. Steven Spielberg gave us West Side Story. James Gunn brought it up to announce with the Suicide Squad. In the Heights was pretty good. The Mitchells vs. the Machines was really good. Spider-Man No Way Home. Malcolm and Marie with Zendaya and John David Washington. A Quiet Place Part 2 was pretty damn good. So was 8-Bit Christmas. So was Judas and the Black Messiah. There was a lot of fun stuff in 2021, but again, a lot of bad stuff in 2021 as well, as we just mentioned. And, that's not the last of the bad years we've had post-COVID, because we'll save that for later on in the list here. But let's get to number 2 on the worst movie years of the last 20 years, with 2021 being number 3. Number 2 is probably the only year on this list that is pre-COVID, 2017. 2017 was a pretty bad year because there was a lot of big high-budgeted movies that a lot of people were excited about, but when they finally came out, we came to the realization that, oh shit, these are pretty bad. Like Beauty and the Beast, one of the worst Disney live-action remakes, Smurfs: The Lost Village. I mean, one of the many reasons why the Smurfs should just stay off the big screen altogether, because if you can't make the Smurfs good in an animated movie after 2 failed live-action attempts, then it's time to stop. And then, of course, what did we have this past summer? Smurfs 2025, which is somehow even worse than The Lost Village is. But also we had the end of the Fast and Furious' trend with The Fate of the Furious, which is one of the worst sequels once they brought in Charlize Theron as Cypher was her name. It's been so long since I've seen that movie, but I'm sorry. There's only one Bill Cipher that came out in the There's only one Cipher that came out in the 2010s, and I completely ruined that by giving you the answer. There's only one good Cipher that came out in the 2010s, and that was Bill Cipher from Gravity Falls. Charlize Theron was fucking terrible in that movie, and the fact that they kept her in the next 3 films, it's just kind of like, come on. The Alien series finally came to a point where I just couldn't take it anymore with Alien Covenant. Alien Covenant was pretty terrible, but in the last couple of years they have resurrected the Alien franchise back to some relevancy with Romulus and just recently Alien Earth. Guy Ritchie gave us another bad King Arthur movie, because if the 2004 one wasn't bad enough for you, here's Legend of the Sword. The Snowman was fucking terrible. A Cure for Wellness was pretty bad. The Tom Cruise Mummy movie, the movie that was supposed to start the Dark Universe, and it was done before it even got out of the starting gates. Monster Trucks, a terrible kids film. Ghost in the Shell, one of the worst remakes of an anime you will ever see. Just terrible movie. Not only that, we had stuff like The Boss Baby was pretty bad. Kingsman: The Golden Circle was a bad sequel. Live by Night, Ben Affleck very rarely misses as a director, and he missed the mark on that one. Baywatch was pretty bad. Rough Night, Fist Fight, Snatched. A lot of bad comedies I'm seeing on this list here. Chips, The Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales. Dead franchises can also tell no tales either. I hope this franchise is dead, but of course it's not. Luc Besson gave us another really bad movie in Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. Tom Hanks misses the mark with a big film in The Circle. Octavia Spencer and Sam Worthington were in The Shack, which was not a great film. Just a lot of bad movies that year, but a lot of good stuff. This was the year they introduced everybody to Jordan Peele as a great horror director with Get Out. You know, M. Night Shyamalan made his grand return with Split. After the Visit was a small return to form. We got a great film in the DCEU with Wonder Woman at last. You know, a great Guardians of the Galaxy sequel, a great Lego Batman movie. Logan was the best movie of that year. So the year wasn't an overall misfire, but yeah, there were a lot of notably bad films in 2017 that I saw from this list here. And yeah, it was just not a great year for films in general, but it pales in comparison to the number one worst movie year of the last 20 years. And this one actually took me by surprise when I actually put this together. But yeah, maybe this year was actually much worse than I had originally thought. The number one worst movie year of the last 20 years, and this was really a shock to me when I put this list together, but 2024. Yeah, last year. I did not think last year overall was a bad year for movies, but looking at the films that I really liked and the films I thought were pretty bad, 2024 kind of took the cake for the worst overall year of bad movies. And there was a lot of bad movies. A lot of bad blockbusters, a lot of bad Oscar contenders. I mean, you know, you got stuff like Rebel Moon, Part 2, The Scargiver, which the first movie was already bad enough on its own merits. Hellboy, The Crooked Man, Not Another Church Movie, Red One, Kraven the Hunter, Megamind versus the Doom Syndicate, the Mean Girls musical. They marketed it as not being a musical, even though it was based off the Broadway musical, so what the fuck was even the point of that? The terrible Night Swim, the first really bad SpongeBob movie, Saving Bikini Bottom, the Sandy Cheeks movie, M. Night Shyamalan's daughter making a terrible movie in The Watchers, another pointless sequel nobody was asking for, Twisters, Despicable Me 4, let's drain as much as that we can take out of there, Lift, the Kevin Hart movie, The American Society of Magical Negroes, which had a really good concept overall, but just bad execution, Back to Black, the Amy Winehouse biopic, Gladiator 2, another pointless sequel nobody was asking for. Here, a movie that's so bad it's kind of good, directed by Robert Zemeckis. And then you had the cream of the crop of the worst films of the year. Kevin Costner's Horizon, an American Saga, was pretty bad. Moana 2 was a terrible sequel that was not even a real sequel. It was just the Disney Plus TV show chopped down into a movie, and they even admitted that it was something that was chopped down from an original Disney Plus series, and they put it out there strictly because they were losing money and had to make a quick buck fast. The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim. The only reason that movie even exists is because Warner Brothers needed to retain the Lord of the Rings rights. Madam Web, the beginning of the end of the Sony non-Spider-Man cinematic universe, whatever the hell that was. Unfrosted, the Pop-Tart Story, the movie that made Jerry Seinfeld so pissed off that he went against woke people for a little bit there, but kind of relapsed back into reality a little bit, unlike some other person that we'll get to later on. Borderlands, Eli Roth's terrible adaptation of a video game that was way past its prime and trying way too hard to be a Guardians of the Galaxy Suicide Squad knockoff. Argyle, the movie that literally destroyed Matthew Vaughn's reputation as a filmmaker by him showing that Kingsman: The Secret Service was just a one-trick pony for him. That and Kick-Ass, but and Layer Cake too. Okay, maybe saying that he was a one-trick pony is a little too much, but he has not made a good movie in the last couple of years, really. Joker for Leia. Hey, let's take one of the best movies of 2019 and completely destroy it with a sequel that is so ridiculous and so stupid. Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis, the biggest pretentious mess of a film you'll ever see, and the magnum opus of crap in 2024. Zachary Levi destroying his reputation, not just in movies, but also with his sanity with Harold and the Purple Fucking Crayon. That abysmal mess of a movie that is one of the most detestable movies I have ever had to sit through. That movie was a disaster of a film. There was a lot of bad movies in 2024. But there was a lot of good stuff in 2024. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that was really damn good. I mean, the best movies that came out last year, three of the best movies that came out last year, my top three were all animated movies. You know, Inside Out 2, The Wild Robot, Orion in the Dark. We had great stuff in Hundreds of Beavers, Saturday Night, Piece by Piece, If, Late Night with the Devil, Challengers, Lisa Frankenstein, Anora, the Best Picture winner that year, last year, Wicked, Dune Part 2, Drive Away Dolls, Furiosa. There was a lot of really good stuff that came out in 2024, and that should not be pushed to the side for the year in general. It was a solid year, but I think I've ranked on my list here all the really good stuff that came out that year. Meanwhile, the bad stuff just stuck out like a sore thumb. I mean, I looked at my list when I was all said and done, and I really had to look and think to myself, was there really only 34 good films over 166 bad ones? Like, I couldn't believe that, but, I mean, yeah, I looked back on it, and yeah, there was a lot of bad stuff in that year. A lot of stuff that was just disappointments, pointless films that did not need to be made. You know, Amelia Perez, another one of the big Oscar contenders that really should not have been because the movie was not that great. Just a really bad year overall. Yeah, I was actually kind of surprised when this was all said and done. I looked at my list and I thought, yeah, this is going to have to be something I have to say. But yeah, 2024 really is the worst year for movies in the last 20 years. And that's saying a lot. I mean, yeah, like I said, there was a lot of good stuff that came out last year, but there was also a lot of bad stuff too. So yeah, 2024 was the worst movie year of the last 20 years. 2008 was the best movie year of the last 20 years. Let me know down below. What did you think of my list? What are some bad movie years from the last 20 years, or even before that? What do you think of some of the worst movie years of all time? Let me know down below. And be back here next week for another 20th anniversary special where I'll talk about some of my favorite overlooked gems of the last 20 years. There was a lot of really good films that came out over the last 20 years, and I figured, what the hell? Let's do a show about that. So, we'll take a look at the best overlooked gems of the last 20 years coming up next week on the show, so be on the lookout for that. But, with all that said, thank you so much for watching this, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button. Check out the last episode I did where I reviewed Nobody 2 and Fixed, and check out our playlist below as well. And we will leave you with a look at movies now available on Blu-ray and DVD, or coming out this week. So, thanks for watching this. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time. Until then, thanks for watching. See you next time. Take care.